Hello there and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I shall be reading from The Crown of Stones, Magic Price Book 1 by C.L. Schneider. Prologue. Bodies pressed in on me on all sides. More were piled up beneath my feet. The grass gorged with assorted fluids and trampled remains squished under my boots as I carved open my opponent's chest, pushed him aside and moved on to the next. There was always a next. The Langorians were a swarm, an inexhaustible, savage, mindless swarm, and we had no choice but to become like them to survive. And we had to become animals going at each other, mechanically pushing against the tide, battering whatever stood in our way with whatever we had. Clubs, axes, swords, knives, our bruised, bleeding, bare hands, fighting for days, months, years, striving to hold out against an enemy that knew nothing of mercy, an enemy stronger and far more brutal than us. We'd become something less than we were, and we were still losing. I grabbed the Queen's arm and steered her out of the fray. We can't take much more of this. Needing to be heard, I drew her close. We shall pull back. Pull back? Queen Arcana yanked herself free. She gave me a wild, defiant look, full of passion and reckless resolve. It made her exotic features come alive. My order stands. We press on, Troy, as always. I shook my head. Our numbers are dwindling too fast. We can't win this. We can and we will. Ilagar raised a hand and she touched my face, and the sound of metal clashing and men screaming seemed to fade away. Brushing back the blood-spattered white strands that had come loose from my braids, she ran a finger down the strong line of my jaw. Trust me, love, the Langorians will not have Rella. How can you still believe that? Because I must, and because I have faith. Isla, I hesitated, but it had to be said. I saw the messenger arrive from Cabri. I know he carried orders from the king. You can't keep ignoring them. She dropped her hand and backed up. My husband is a fool. I don't care how many messengers he dispatches from his throne. He is not out here. The blood of these men bathed my skin, not his. This is my war, Troy. Mine. She cried. We fight, we die, we go on until we prevail. By my command, I will not surrender. That is the way of it, and that is the only way. My throat went dry at the fire in her, the way she stood outlined by the backdrop of chaos, flanked by the crackling flames that consumed our camp, with sweat beading on her dark skin and battle-lust glazing her stare. I wanted to pull her into my arms. I wanted to go back to this morning on the furs of her tent, when Ilagar's flawless ebony skin was on me, where status and race didn't matter and death felt far away. Mostly I wanted to believe as she did. I wanted to believe her, as I had so many times before, that every battle brought us closer to victory, that persistence was our greatest strength, and it would carry us through. But this was it. King Draken of Langor was throwing everything he had at us, making one final push to wipe us all out, to once and for all lay claim to the land that his forefathers sought and failed to conquer. Surrendering was unacceptable. She was right in that. Yet Ilagar had lost her way. Somewhere along the line, the outcome stopped mattering to her as much as the fight, and my affection, my awe of her, had blinded me for far too long. Give me the order, I demanded, and let me shift the odds. The dismissal was quick. No. We can't keep going like this, sword for sword, day after day, until there's none of us left. Let me cast hell down on these black-hearted bastards. I have given you my answer. It is no different than the last 100 times. I moved closer. You know what I can do. My magic can give us an advantage the Langorians can't match. We can stop this fucking never-ending war, Isla. We can stop it together with steel and magic, if you'll just. You are Shinri, she hissed. Your kind are meant to do as they are told. Yet after 6 years in the ranks, you still push for something that I will never bend to. Then you are as big a fool as the king. Her hand that only a moment ago caressed me struck my face. My husband forced your service in this army upon us both, and from day one when you stood in my tent, a young man eager to please, drooling with the urge to cast, I made it plain that this conflict would not be solved with magic. It's dishonourable. I don't trust it. I forbid it. You are my best soldier, Troy. I have given you free rein in my bed, but not out here, not in battle, ever. Is that clear? Staring at her, my heart went cold. I don't think I can do this any more. Fighting as half a man, ashamed of what I am because you don't approve. I'm not just a soldier. I held up the sword in my hand. I called to the stones embedded in the leather-wrapped handle, and they began to glow. Their vibrations pressed in through my skin, down into my veins, and the uncertainty washed away. I'm a Shinri soldier. Put that magic away, she scolded. Do you want to kill us all? I can control it. Can you? Her eyes were harsh. Can you promise me that when your spell steals the strength it needs to be born, that it won't steal from my men? That it won't steal from me? Your magic is a disease, Ian. Your need for it, your addiction, clouds your judgment. It threatens us all and undermines my orders. Your orders contradict my duty to keep Rella safe. I've tried to pretend they didn't. I've tried to be what you wanted, but I can't. I'm Shinri, Isla. I am magic. If you don't untie my hands, we will all die here today. Stunned, Islagar gaped at me. For a moment there was a rare vulnerability in her eyes, a kind of resigned sadness. Then she raised her sword, turned and rejoined the battle. She left me standing alone on the rim of the conflict, watching with a crushing sense of finality as the men I'd fought beside for years were being slaughtered. I could save them, I thought, though they wouldn't do the same for me. A magic user granted exemption from the slavery that kept my kind in check. I was tolerated at best. Lately, though, I'd seen it in their eyes, next to the pain, the hunger and the exhaustion. They no longer hated me because I might use magic and bring them harm. They hated me for not using it and for continuing to let them die. Frustration pushed a scream from my lungs. A pang of rage and resentment sped through me. I pulled my second sword, dove into the mayhem and started swinging. I sliced through bodies one after the other, trying to lose myself in the rhythm. I pressed forward deeper into the madness, wrath blazing in my white eyes as I strived for an answer to the conflict burning inside me. My magic knew nothing of sides. My spells fed without discrimination. They were selfish and heartless. They didn't care who was right or wrong, who was strong or weak. To create themselves they would drain friend as easily as foe. In the villages they called me a champion, but I wasn't. I was a weapon. Somehow I'd forgotten that. I looked around me at the dogged Rellan soldiers fighting for their realm, at the spirited Arulan warriors of Islagar's homeland, and I sent the magic back into the stones on my sword. Not here, I thought. The cost is too great. I had to get out in the open. Going against Islagar's wishes was bad enough, but I couldn't risk catching her army in the crossfire. Spying an opening, I moved to make my way off the field, and the ground began to shake, and in seconds it was undulating with such force that none of us could stand. It was inconvenient, but it was no surprise. Miracallan was a fidgety continent that didn't stand still for long, and having fought for years in the worst of it, the disputed quake-plagued region between Rella and Langor, we understood that land would quiver when it pleased. After we'd all get up and resume the battle. But today something was different. The trembling wasn't stopping. The ground wasn't just cracking, it was rupturing. Not in slender, minute fractures as in time past, but in long, jagged canyons that ripped across the field, dissecting the valley. Deep chasms opened without warning, swallowing 15 men at a time and spewing plumes of ancient dust high into the air. Hillsides slid away, overhanging cliffs broke off and tumbled down. The entire landscape was being violently rearranged as we all lay watching, prone on the heaving and blood-soaked ground. Coughing out the debris in my lungs as panic broke out on both sides, I thought I should get up. I still had a sword in each hand, and enemies were all around me. I should attack now while the ground is still shaking before they recover, but as the land continued to buckle and roll, my attention shifted away from the quake and the battle to the crooked crevice opening alongside me, and the object buried within. Halfway down one wall, partially obscured by a layer of dirt, was a curved row of fuse-coloured stones, glowing softly in an array of shades. The stones, sapphire, spinel, diamond, ruby, obsidian, were pulsing and emanating a vibration that was definitely magic. Yet its tone was unfamiliar. It was pungent, so sweet and alluring, and I couldn't look away. Sliding a sword into the sheath on my back, I scooted closer. The edge of the rift crumbled some at my weight, but I didn't waver. Buried in this very spot was the once sprawling empire of my Shinri ancestors, a fallen realm lost and unseen by the world for over 500 years. Whatever artifact the quake uncovered was worth the risk. I reached inside the hole and my fingers brushed the rounded lip, and an immediate, intense current of energy licked my skin. It ran through me and I let out a yelp. Not from pain. The jolt was one of pure pleasure. It was raw and acute, and I quickly wrapped my entire hand around the thing and held on. 9 distinct magical vibrations were alive inside the object. I could feel them all swirling and overlapping. Each had their own well of energy, but together they formed a compilation of searing, pulsing power that was vast beyond any magic I'd ever experienced before. It was massive, concentrated. Enthralled, I abandoned my other sword and started digging. Loosening the soil, I tugged on the artifact. It didn't take long for the dirt wall to collapse and my prize to come free. As I lifted it out of the hole, I shook it clean, revealing a circlet of stones fashioned like a king's crown. It was scratched and marred by age, but it was pure perfection. The soldiers around me wouldn't see it that way. They couldn't feel its magic and couldn't taste it. They had no idea the pleasure it could offer. Yet simply looking at the stone crown opened a familiar, sinking, wrenching pit of need in my gut. Sweet beaded then poured off my skin. Tremors erupted deep inside me, rivaling those that split the valley floor. And I was suddenly so empty and so hungry. I hope you enjoyed that chapter reading and that you'll go check out the book. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.